Time now for Focus, and today we're looking at Marine Le Pen and other French politicians with similar ideas as her far-right party prepares for a congress at the weekend. In a few days, it will no longer be known as the National Front. Le Pen seeking to turn the page on last year's presidential election. Karina Chabour and Aurore Dupuis report.
A warm welcome. Yet behind the scenes, the atmosphere is rather frisky. Weakened by her niece's return to the spotlight and quarrels with her father, Marine Le Pen is putting on a brave face on the last stretch of her tour of France. Just a few days before the National Front Congress, she faces no competition as head of the party, but she has yet to rally the troops. 280 activists have been invited to put their questions in writing. They've remained faithful to Marine Le Pen, but many are worried, if not disappointed.
Que pensez-vous faire dans votre prochaine campagne afin d'éviter un nouveau fiasco lors du débat?
Comment pouvons-nous nous débarrasser d'Emmanuel Macron? Oui.
Elle a la réponse?
Elle a des idées.
Hoping for a political revenge, the far-right party is revamping itself with a name and status change. Le Pen hopes to improve her image without her right-hand man. Florian Philippot walked away 6 months ago.
Philippot left the National Front of his own will. He left with his staff. It was a small group of people. A page has been turned, but that's democracy for you. I wish him good luck and a lot of patience. I know patience isn't one of his virtues.
After her defeat in the last presidential elections, Le Pen says she's learned from her mistakes, but she's struggling to define the new party line and to attract new allies. Meanwhile, the competition is heating up. The new president of the Patriots is also touring the country. He claims animal protection is a cause close to his heart, one that he wasn't able to act on in Marine Le Pen's party.
During the presidential campaign, I brought forward the cause of animal rights, but it was difficult. We had to hold back on many issues. Banning bullfights, for instance. With the National Front, that wasn't an option. With our new party, it is, so who knows, maybe we'll find a way to convince her it's a just cause.
Since quitting the National Front, Florian Philippot wants to stand out in the far-right end of the political spectrum.
Tu vois, quand c'est moi, ils s'en vont. Non, mais c'est vrai. C'est ça, j'en fais pas.
Philippot says he's backed by more than 6,000 members, among them MEPs and regional councillors. Most used to be in the National Front. That day, he organised a lunch debate in a bid to attract new followers. On the menu, beef bourguignon, gratin dauphinois, and Frexit.
Thanks to Brexit, things are clear. When it comes to our campaign for the 2019 European Parliament election, there won't be 50 shades of nationalists. It will be Frexit or not Frexit, period. And I am Frexit. And the meeting is about to begin.
A hard line on Europe, yet to ensure the survival of his movement, Philippot needs to be re-elected as a Member of Parliament next year.
En un mois, nous avons progressé 10 points déjà. 10 points.
He's counting on disappointed National Front voters, abstainers, and even on supporters of Stand Up France, another nationalist fringe party.
Bon courage.
Merci.
À bientôt. Merci. Et battez-vous. Vous laissez pas faire par la FNSEA.
Almost a year ago, in an unprecedented move, Nicolas Dupont-Aignan endorsed Marine Le Pen in the second round of the presidential elections. But since her defeat, the MP has distanced himself again, aiming for a much broader electorate.
I'm convinced that my active approach, because I'm the only one openly speaking to both the Republicans and the National Front, I'm convinced that this approach is the right one. But let's be careful. This must be a union based on a common program, not a union just for the sake of a union.
With its 20,000 members, Stand Up France sees itself in a pivotal position.
Here, take this man, for instance. He campaigned for François Fillon. This lady here was part of a pro-Sarkozy committee. Nadia is a national delegate for France Arise party. This man here raises cattle, and the list goes on.
Dupont-Aignan dreams of a right-wing coalition, but has yet to convince the centre-right Republican Party of warming up to that idea.
And I'm joined now by Jim Shields, Professor of French Politics at Aston University in the UK. Hello, thank you very much indeed for your time. Now, there's a new poll out that shows that Marine Le Pen's image has taken a big hit. 16% of people saying that she'd make a good president. It was 24% this time last year. How do you explain this?
Well, it's almost incomprehensible how a party that came first in the last European, departmental and regional elections, and whose leader won a third of the ballot, almost 11 million votes in the presidential runoff, can now find itself in such an apparently broken state. Rather than being the main opposition to the Macron presidency, as Marine Le Pen had hoped, the FN descended into infighting over who was to blame for the heavier than predicted defeats of last summer. Those internal divisions, combined with a steep fall, as you've noted, in public approval ratings, make the FN look now like a party threatened in its survival as a major political force. It lost its rising star in Marion Maréchal Le Pen. Then, as your package said, it lost its deputy leader, Florian Philippot. The former leader, Jean-Marie Le Pen, continues to snipe from the sidelines, and Marine Le Pen has simply never recovered from the disastrous effects of her televised debate against Macron back in May. Politics is about momentum, and having seen the FN on a steeply rising curve since Marine Le Pen took over as leader in 2011, we now see it for the first time on a steeply downward curve.
Now, you mentioned Jean-Marie Le Pen, Marine Le Pen's father. He, of course, is the founder of the National Front. You said he was sniping. He's written memoirs in which he says that he pities her. He feels sorry for her. Just how much is he hurting her image still?
Well, this is, in a way, a terrible indictment. To say that he pities her is among the worst things that he could say of his successor as leader of the FN. He might say he dislikes her, he might say he disapproves of her, he might say he disowns her, and all of those are true. But to say he pities her is to add insult to the injury that she's already suffering in the backlash from her failures last summer. Now, part of the purpose of this weekend's Congress is not just to re-elect Marine Le Pen and to re-legitimise her, it's also to get rid once and for all of her father. What the FN is proposing to do this weekend is to vote on new statutes that have written out of existence his post as honorary president.
And what's changing the name going to do? Will it make any difference, do you think?
This is cosmetic. This is really cosmetic. The Congress is supposed to be looking at strategy, is supposed to be looking at policy. Changing the name has caught the imagination, and that's become the sort of focal point, if you like, but it is cosmetic. This Congress is unlikely to resolve any of the contradictions at the heart of the FN's current existential crisis. Should it pursue economically and socially right-leaning policies, ultra-conservative policies? Should it go back to its roots? Or should it keep on track going after disenchanted voters who would historically have been on the left? In other words, should the FN take the fight to Laurent Wauquiez on the hard right or to Jean-Luc Mélenchon on the far left? It can't plausibly do both. And how does it resolve its calamitously confused stance on the EU and the single currency? Changing the name will not address any of those issues.
Now, as we heard in the report, Nicolas Dupont-Aignan, the leader of France Rise, has distanced himself from Le Pen since last year's campaign. Does the National Front actually have any allies, or is there any hope at this stage that it can find some?
Well, it's certainly true, as your package said, that the support deal that Le Pen struck with Dupont-Aignan last summer was a first. The FN had never found an ally coming out of the mainstream right before. Now what we see is splits all around us, of course, and there's nothing new in that. You could add to the parties featured in the report other parties, the Party of France, the Southern League, and others. So there are different parties and movements that operate in the same territory as the FN and like to see themselves as rivals. But Dupont-Aignan is a bit different. Dupont-Aignan, his ambition is to unify the right. And in that sense, he could be useful to the Front National. He could be useful as a bridge across to some kind of deal eventually with Laurent Wauquier's Conservative Republicans, although that's not in sight at the moment.
OK, thank you very much indeed for your time. Jim Shields joining us there from the UK as the National Front prepares for a Congress at the weekend.